Hello, my name is Sam. So I began this series of drawings on the left in exercise 3 by emphasizing this Italianate facade red and blue trim and leaving all other colors in grayscale. In exercise 3A, I took these colors and imagined them being exploded from the facade as if someone was tossing paint buckets out the window. In exercise 3B, I took the bricks from a sort of unique building in the neighborhood, which had quite a large variety of them, and collaged them onto my building's facade. In exercise 3, I imagined my facade being draped in fabric in order to reduce the visible details to just being the subtle surface changes, such as the lintels, sills, and dormer window. In order to start developing a basis for project 1, I decided to move forward with this draping concept. In project 1, this drape or mask would be the main concept to invoke a sense of familiarity within the local context of the Mexican war streets. This is the final axon drawing for project 1. As you can see, this mask is being exploded from the pseudo-Italianate facade and exposing the level 1 storefront and the double studio units on the 2nd and 3rd floor. Moving into project 2 of the urban neighborhood library, my concept takes the dimensions of the contextual blocks of the neighborhood, as well as the local building typology, and directly abstracts their characteristics. These blocks are then intersected, cut, pierced, and stacked upon each of these block volumes in order to form programmatic function of the interior spaces created from this performance of parts. While my project 1 concept had helped to begin project 2, it became apparent to me that this masking concept was just an additional layer that eventually became negligible to what this new concept had evolved into. As a starting off point, I sketched out this idea of taking these building blocks of similar dimensions on the neighborhood scale and intersected and stacked them. Adopting this contextual language for the project is an essential part of the process. So in order to do this, I looked closely at some of the typological characteristics, such as the incredibly common single dormer window and rows of 3 punched windows. I also looked at some other more specific features of the neighborhood, such as this exterior of a local church in the top left up here. In this concept model, I used a variety of different materials to present how these colliding building blocks would designate the different spaces within the interior. Here is where the library would be located within the neighborhood. The east facade facing Sherman, which is down here. The north facade would be facing Greaves, which is this alleyway street. And the west side is Wolfram here. So here's the ground floor plan. The entryway is in the top right corner at the corner of Sherman and Greaves here.
Sorry, Sam, this is oriented different from the last one, just so what was the bottom is now the right-hand side.
Yeah, there's a north arrow down here.
Okay.
You'd come in through here. There's a fire escape directly on the right here. And coming in through here, there's this volume here is sort of the ramp volume. There's a ramp to go up to the 2nd level, as well as a ramp to get into this multi-purpose space here. And continuing this way, there is a reading volume here. It has poche bookshelves and sort of poche sitting space as well. Also poche bookshelves here. And down this way, there's the children's volume. They can climb inside of this poche here as well. And into the multi-purpose space, there's also, and down this way, there's another fire escape and multiple bathrooms. And down in this right corner here would be the offices for the library staff, as well as the meeting room. And onto the second floor, up that ramp I mentioned before is the cafe. There's also another ramp to get to the third floor right here. And this long hallway sort of connects both of the fire escapes, taking into account safety. Also, there's places of respite at either end, and also, I guess, in the middle area as well. And there's also a restroom area in the bottom left on the second floor. So up the ramp here, you come up here, and this room here is completely designated to reading and as well as some seating. This is all handicap accessible. And moving on to the next floor, which is not handicap accessible, but it is just a space for reading the books you get from the floor below, or I guess resting in general. So here's an elevation from Grieve Street. This face of the building, as you can see, is quite glassy, which is because it is the northern facing facade of the complex where no direct sunlight shines from. To give some context, this volume here is the space where level 2 ramp goes into, sorry, the level 1 to level 2 ramp goes into the cafe, which is right here. Here's a section drawing from the Sherman Ave side. Shown in here is the auditorium space, or multi-purpose space, and a hallway and the fire escape here, or the level 2 hallway and the fire escape. So here's a section drawing from Wolfram Street. Here you can see the level 1 adults reading area and the children's area, the cafe, the room with the stacks, and the room above that. And here's a closer look at that. You can see the poche children area here and the reading room a little bit closer. And here is, and this is my final axon drawing for the project too. In this, I intended to convey this idea of an agglomeration of parts of the neighborhood, while also attempting to express the inner complexities of the project. This colliding explosion of volumes can literally be translated as what the studio project is, what it means to design a contemporary building in a historical district, but also taking into account what it means to design a 21st century library. Where the library isn't just a place to borrow books, but a growing number of programs that need to be compiled into one building. Thank you.
I mean, this is a very highly accomplished project. The drawings and images in your description are, I think, very well considered and very highly accomplished. I have a couple of questions, and they might seem sort of, I don't know, esoteric's not the right word, but perplexing maybe. Would you call your proposal a stacked building or a piled building?
In this case, I think more of a stacked. My previous iteration was definitely a piled building, I would say. I think stacked is the right term here.
I mean, it's landed in an interesting spot where, I mean, I'm asking you the question because I guess because it's a project, but also because I can't quite decipher whether it's a stack or a pile. Like you show us your final axon, which is in one way like kind of hilarious. Like here's my final axon of this thing. It's just like all of this stuff. Like is I don't even know if your building is in there or not. I mean, I assume it is in parts and fragments, but like that's clearly an attitude about piling and like collecting, and it's like the composition in a way doesn't matter. Things can be sort of repiled and rejumbled, and whereas like a stack is sequential, like order matters. But it's interesting here, like in this image, like, yeah, there is a stack logic to it, but then I see, for example, you know, these little tough shed like dormers sort of peeking through the ceiling above in one volume. Things are a little bit askew. In fact, that floor of that volume is askew. And so it's interesting to think about sort of middling between a stack and a pile. And I'm trying to figure out in your mind and in your project what those two things mean or connote with regard to kind of fitting in while standing out, and what their relationship is to context. Because in a way, you could make an argument that stacking is the predominant logic of the city, at least, especially with regard to section, and even just like the 3-story context that you're working in. So you could say like, yeah, that's the way. Like a stack is the way to accommodate a kind of blending in or a fitting in anyway. And like there are different ways to express the stacking, whether it's by the reveal of a floor plate, whether it's by relief, whether it's by material breaks. There's like 100 different ways to talk about a stack. You could also say like piling is perhaps a way to fit in, because really when you look at the context, like it's a sort of ordered pile of materials and forms and elements, and you know, there's no sort of right way to produce the stack. Other than maybe like the dormer's on the top and the stoop is on the bottom, and like, but the stuff in between, like we have a lot of variability with. So that's where like I'm looking at these drawings and like they're beautiful, and like they're clearly very well thought out. The color palettes are incredible, like a lot of really wonderful stuff here. And I'm just thinking like, is it a stack or a pile? And in a way, like the way you answer that question, I think says a lot about how you think about the context with regard to section and elevation. And so he's like, it's kind of both. It's like, well, now I'm even more confused, but like in a good way. Like it's a perplexing conundrum you've set up, and maybe that's my sort of ultimate critique of the project, is that coming to a kind of conclusion that you can defend of that it's one or the other. And by the way, you could still, like, binaries are always slippery, so you don't have to hold me to that. But like you could also say like, no, but here's the reasons why, or the qualities why this thing is between a stack and a pile. It relates in this way, and it performs these things. Like, for example, you know, so that's a little bit where maybe I'm left with some lingering curiosities about your work.
I mean, I think maybe that's also because the final axon like was almost a manifesto where you say like, oh, this is what we're doing now, and it's like it's basically all we do, and that's easy, right? So like just kind of gathering things from the context and mixing it, and then that's basically the result. So I think, I mean, which is kind of interesting, but at the same time it's also a little dangerous in that sense that how do we judge this, right? In a sense of like what is like not done right but successfully in terms of form and spatial qualities from that, by not just like saying like, okay, let's just mix it all together, and it could be stacking or piling or assembling or I don't know. So I think it's kind of interesting in a way, because I feel like you always want to make a handout for how to do that in a way, with the way you draw things or the way you do things, although you didn't create a literal manual. But I think there's like a deep thinking going on with the brief that was given to you, which I find really fascinating. And I was wondering like if there was like something that you think like that you could actually create as an additional document or drawing where you say like these things work and these things don't work that well. like just to kind of give it a differentiation, because right now, I think, yeah, when I look at the drawing, I mean, it's a beautiful drawing, but then at the same time, I'm wondering, okay, if like some of the envelopes are slightly tilted, like intersections are not quite clear, but that might be intentional, and that might be a good thing, right? To kind of communicate your concept. So I think there are a lot of really wonderful, good questions that your project brings up, I think, by what you're doing. But I don't think I want to critique this project as, you know, this is now a building project and this is like a fixed kind of form or agglomeration of things I found. I think it's more a statement rather than a building proposal for me, if that's fair. And that's not, I don't mean that in a bad thing at all. I think that's a good thing, in a way.
I mean, I see it as a building proposal, but I think there's a statement in there. I'm just not sure what the statement, like, I'm not sure where the statement lands. Like, I appreciated the written statement that you literally had in your presentation, but I can see this as a building proposal. To me, it's like almost like an early Gary project, like Gary's Santa Monica house or something. Although the material is a bit more refined and like the glazing and stuff. But like there's a quality to it that is about things appear in some instances to have sort of just landed that way. And in other instances, it appears that they have to be that way, right? In order to make the internal organization work. So, I mean, I get what Nicole is saying, and I don't disagree, except for with the part that I can read this as a building proposal, but I'm also seeing it, and I think maybe, and I don't want to speak for Nicole, but my impression of that is that there's also a commentary here, like you're critiquing the neighborhood in a way, and I want to know more about what the critique is. So like in a way, is the architecture sort of pedagogic? Is it meant to like reflect back onto the community its own self-image seen anew? Is it in a way meant to construct a kind of behavior of the community? Those would be like pedagogic responses, but architecture and its ability to construct behavior, which is historically borrowed from landscape, but or is the commentary on the project like like this neighborhood or this part of the city already has these qualities inherent to it, and if we begin to leverage them, we can create new social spaces that are you know, provocative and create you know, discourse and creativity. And you know, like there's a lot that I think that I can read as a building proposal, but there's also something I think that you're wanting to say that is perhaps different than the sort of redeployment of a material or a formal condition to construct form, space, and order. It seems like you're wanting to do those things in order to make a larger, more broad comment about whatever social, cultural, or political context that you're working in. Which is, I mean, I think it's, for Studio 2, like all of these projects are really amazing to see at this level, and like to have that kind of question. And even like, that's why I say like, it might, like a stack or a pile might seem sort of esoteric or weird or whatever, but I think embedded in that, there's an entire ethos about how you understand or think about context. Can we just click through some other images of yours? Just go up and down or something?
Clark, you realize his renderings match your space.
I did, yeah, I know, the pink and
the different, yeah, pinks with the pop of yellow, yeah.
I also like how your context. When you see at your video, it says sale, you know, for sale.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's hilarious.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. See, another way to interpret contextualization. Match your drawings to your critics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really beautiful drawings in the proposal itself. Very intensely described, which I really appreciate. One of the things I'm thinking of is that the early drawing, or sorry, the sketch where you have the three different things that were interesting to you in the context. Yeah, right there. Can you, nope, last one.
Okay.
Yeah, could you, what are those three elements?
So this is the exterior of the church, which it's not like a common thing, but it's something that's pretty close by in the neighborhood.
So it's the
there's
alley
these-
facade, the back of the church.
Yeah, right. And then there's this kind of weird garage. There's a lot of garages that are in the back of these row houses, but this one was kind of odd. And then the typical Italianate facade that I had studied earlier with the punched windows and the single dormer.
Well, the reason I'm interested in this is because you identify three really banal things in the context of a neighborhood which has a lot of diversity, a lot of kind of things that stand out in maybe exceptional ways. And so I'm interested in your focusing on these kind of offbeat yet generic examples of what you found to be of interest. And I think there's something about trying to develop a language around those elements that I find really interesting. Don't ask me why, but I've actually spent a lot of time on the rooftops of a couple of buildings in this neighborhood. And one of the things really amazing when you're on the rooftop is that the things that seem the same when you're on the street, you can really recognize how very different they are from above. So you can see into, you can see actually the porches or the decks that people have built on their rooftops. You can see that certain things which appear to have a certain degree of depth and volume when you're on the street actually don't have that same degree of depth and volume. You can see the different kind of patios and backyards, courtyard spaces. This whole neighborhood is really full of different, really beautiful kind of secret gardens, which you have no idea they're even there from the street. So I think there's something about the ordinariness and the banality of those three images on the left. And I'm reading that against some kind of opportunities for secret exceptionality. And one thing I'm wondering is if you could find a way to navigate your building on its roof, basically, its roofs. If it seems to me that there would be, it's a kind of a terrace already. It's a terrace system of sorts. So I'm wondering if there could be different ways to kind of come to different vantage points, and maybe they're not all of the roof needs to be inhabitable, but parts of it could provide certain windows, certain hidden discoveries, and that maybe like the forms that you're using, which are kind of self-similar, and none really that stands out from the other outside of its kind of whatever volume you chose. So somehow that within that there's a way to kind of uncover that that hidden secret space that is otherwise might be viewed or encountered in the neighborhood in different ways. And I think that maybe that level of it, that contrast for me between what's totally banal, mundane, and then these kind of exceptional moments, I think could really lend a degree of kind of mystery to your project. I think that would be very nice. I like in the site plan, when you show in the site plan that there's actually this whole ring of green space around it on the street. Yeah, there's a kind, it doesn't really front there's no edge on the right-hand side. I guess you try to front the street a little bit as a gesture, but I like that there's a kind of invitation in that way. And I think it could be nice to try to find ways for that maybe to happen within the building too, outside in. Maybe that has to do with how you think about occupying parts of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
But really nice job on the project.
Good. All right. Well, we're right at 4:30. So maybe that's a good place to end with Sam.